So hey guys, I thought it'd be great to have Sara Davies, fellow dragon, do a Q&A with me and answer some burning questions I've had to ask her.
Well, I've also got some burning questions of my own.
Well, that should be quite a fiery interview.
Come on, I'm starting then. So everybody knows you predominantly as the CEO of Vitabiotics. However, what other business ventures are you involved in?
Well, you're right, Vitabiotics is my main business that I do every day and I have done for many, many years. But I do also enjoy investing in other businesses. Of course, with Dragon's Den, I get the opportunity to work with amazing entrepreneurs and help businesses in different fields altogether, not just in consumer goods or vitamins or health. And that's been fun. It's been great. And also one of my big passions is real estate. So I love property. I love any money I save up, I try and invest in a property. But I don't just like buying a property and renting it out. What I like doing is buying it, looking at the potential and adding value, refurbishing it, maybe add an extra bedroom, etc. Sort of a passion, a hobby that I enjoy. Love looking at floor plans for some reason and figuring out how to make it even better. And then so I do that on the side and like to build up real estate because it's something that's physical, that's there, apart from stocks and shares, you've got that. And I always feel it's a good investment over time. It always does well. So pretty much the three things I do.
No wonder it keeps you busy.
Does keep me busy.
So how old were you when you first started out? And what was your first business venture?
Okay, so as a kid, I guess, you know, I was in school and the first time I sort of handled money was when we were given a project to raise money for charity. And I remember going door to door and trying to, you know, convince people to give money for charity. This was back in India. And I did quite well. In fact, I won a prize for the most amount of money raised. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. I've got this selling aspect. And then I decided to save all the pocket money I had and buy computer games and sell them to friends in school. And at the end of it, I ended up having a couple of friends working for me, giving them commission. They would go and try and find games from other friends, buy them, and then give them, and they would sell and make commission. So it was all really interesting, and plus I enjoyed playing games as well at the time. So it was a fun thing, and that was the first experience I had of really handling money and trying to make money and working with other people. And
turning your hobby into a business.
Exactly.
And a passion that you've got into business.
Absolutely.
Oh, I could see there was a budding entrepreneur right from
so it was way back.
No, I remember when I was young, my dad's been an entrepreneur all his life and he's done businesses in many sectors, always small businesses. And he was really keen for me to learn about business. And they had a wallpaper and paint shop. And my dad decided it would be really great for me to get out and learn the art of, as you say, door-to-door selling. So he helped me come up with a business plan, and basically what he would have me do is I used to go around to where the older people in our village lived. So there was like little areas where there would be bungalows with older people who couldn't get out as much. And I used to go every week and collect £2 a week from them, right? And I used to keep a note of it in the little book. So I had to go and sell them on the idea to start with, then collect the £2 every week, and then that £2 would save up, and then I would organise for a decorator to come out. I'd bring the pattern books to them, let them choose their own wallpaper, and then once a year they would have a room in their house decorated with the £2 a week they'd saved. And you know what? I learned so many skills: the door-to-door selling, planning the business, arranging the decorators, the cash flow. You know, I learned so many skills from that small business. I mean, at the time, I just cursed my dad for sending me out in the middle of winter round the old people's area, collecting £2 a week from them. But I just look back now and think, you know, I could see the glimmer of an entrepreneur in there, even at that very young age.
That's interesting. I mean, you know, I think we were quite fortunate in the sense that your father was an entrepreneur, my father was an entrepreneur, and my uncles were entrepreneurs on their own right as well. So having that exposure, I think, sort of gave us that mental idea that there's a potential to do that and what being an entrepreneur is about. And I think, you know, a lot of people don't have that opportunity, but I think today being an entrepreneur has become a lot bigger and it's being more exposure on it. You look at the shows, Dragon's Den, you know, the Shark Tank, The Profit, it's embracing entrepreneurism and you're reading and learning more about it. So I think that exposure is good for people to understand there's something else out there. You can set your own business up.
Yeah, you know, if I think back when I was very young, people would say to me, what do your parents do? And I would never in a million years have dared say, my dad's an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
It just wasn't cool or wasn't trendy. Whereas I look now and I think, God, I hope my kids are really proud to tell people that, oh yeah, our mum's an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference in the change in times. I know when I went off to university, I went to study management, and there was 30 students on our course, and they asked us at the beginning, what did everyone have the aspiration to do? And you would imagine, 30 students, quite a few of them would want to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I was the only one. Yet I remember after I graduated, they invited me back a few years later, and they got some of their ex-students to come back and show what their career path had been. And by this point, there was a couple of hundred students on that course. And I remember standing up and saying, who in the room has aspirations to be an entrepreneur? And I would say a good third of the people there put their hand up. And it just shows the difference that 7 or 8 years have made in just the way people are so much more accepting. And they say now, the great British economy in a big way is built on the shoulders of all of these smaller businesses, and then some of these smaller businesses that break through to become bigger businesses.
Absolutely. And the fact that they're getting investment, they're getting encouragement, knowing that it's possible. And I think the accessibility with technology, with the internet, allowing people to have that platform to be able to have a voice, whether it's through social media, and also having an ability to sell your product directly to other consumers.
What did you want to be when you were younger? Did you always want to go down this route, or?
As a kid, I wanted to do many different things. I wanted to be a scientist, a pilot, an astrophysicist, and I loved different things, learning different things. For me, it was all about learning as much as I could. But then you sort of figure out what you're really good at. And then, I actually want to be a musician as well, because I love playing instruments and composing music. So I did that for a little bit, but then I just, gravitated towards what I wanted to do, which was business and, being an entrepreneur, getting into healthcare, the company that my father set up. And I thought this is amazing, to be able to change people's lives. And so it's something I've just been doing now for the last 25 years and growing it, building it. And now I have the ability to invest in other entrepreneurs.
When did that change? When did you not change, but progress from wanting to be a business person, running your own business, to wanting to be an investor? What was that mindset change?
I think once I've built Vitabiotics to a certain level and stage, I always was fascinated about business itself and the potential, what things could be. So I think by having the opportunity with Dragon's Den to come across so many businesses, what we see about 100 plus businesses in one season, and that excites me. Working with entrepreneurs, seeing where to take a product and where it can go to essentially, and how we can help and add value to that. And the journey along the way. That's exciting.
You're probably in a bit of a similar situation than me in some respects. I always look and I think, my business is really well established now. I've got a lot of staff, and the challenges that you have as a business are very different to back when it was very small. And I miss and pine after those early days, but not enough to want to go and start again. I have no aspirations to sell my company and start another one from scratch. And I think it's that buzz and that kick that you get from the small businesses. And that's what really drove me to want to do investment. I think I want to be involved in the exciting early stages of business when you've got that, you're just trying to sign that new contract, or you've got this fantastic new idea and you want the business plan to take it to market, but you don't want that to be your whole life. My sister's just had a baby.
Congratulations.
It's wonderful. Oh, it's great.
Hope she's taking pregnant care.
I get to go around and I get to have auntie cuddles and I get to do all the fun stuff, and then at the end of the day I leave her with my sister, and she's the one that has the sleepless night, and I go back home because my kids are a bit older and I get a good night's sleep. And I think it's the same sort of thing. It's like a business. I've got all of the exciting bits, but I don't necessarily have the sleepless nights that go with that. So
it's interesting. You're right. I mean, even with a startup or a smaller business, small changes can make such a big difference and impact, and you can visually see that, and that's exciting as well.
It's great. I don't know about you, but I find, especially, a lot of these businesses, you're going to a strategic meeting with them and it's all about the ideas and throwing around the ideas, and you can see their face light up. And, I might not have specialist knowledge in their sector, but all businesses face the same challenge, and I can throw maybe 20 ideas at the wall with them, maybe 18 of them are a load of rubbish and not relevant, but them other couple might just have an inkling of something there, and then being part of that idea generation taken to the next level, you get such a buzz from that.
Yeah.
And it's a different buzz to you get being in a bigger business. What would you say was the best investment you made in the den so far? And it doesn't have to be the one that's been the most profitable, the one that's the most exciting, that's been the most exciting for you to be involved with.
That's an interesting question. I mean, there have been some great businesses. They've all been fun to work with. I think the one that sticks out is quite recent, which is Look After My Bills. So when they came on the den, in fact, that was one of the toughest negotiations we had, one of the highest valuations. And I remember it was a very small percentage for a very large amount of money. And at the time I negotiated, I think, to double the amount. Even then it was a very small percentage of equity. But what I saw was the guys were great, Will and Henry, and the idea was disruptive in the sense that it could be so scalable. It was a great idea. It was a tech platform for energy switching. So obviously you sign up to an electricity and gas provider, and every year automatically they switch you to a cheaper provider. So it saves you money automatically with you just sleeping, not having to worry about it. So I thought that's a great idea. So we did the deal, and incredibly within 12 months, the subscriber base grew 10 times. They've saved millions and millions of pounds for customers. And I just thought that was a great business. And the fact that now they've been bought out and sold to a larger company, it sort of gives you the full circle of a business where you invest, you're in the show, you invest with a pitch, and then you try and help and add value and scale as much as possible, and then you find someone to buy the business.
So I know you've got a young family, just like I've got. How do you find juggling parenthood with the demands of running the business?
Work-life balance. Mm-hmm. That is a tough one. Look, I mean, one thing I would say is that being an entrepreneur means you have to work hard and you have to put in the hours. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that the fact that your kids see you working hard, because it's a good inspiration. I saw my parents work hard, and that was an inspiration for me. But it is important to spend time with family, as we all know. And I think spending time with family is one thing, but actually being present with the family while you're with them. You know, they could be in the same room as you, but you could be on emails, you could be doing stuff or just watching TV with them. It's really about the activities. Even if you can spend a small amount, really spending that activity, talking with them or taking them out, doing an activity, something fun, a different or a learning activity with them. So
quality
I think
over quantity.
Quality over quantity, exactly. And today we get so distracted with all our devices. It's very difficult to switch off or not look at your iPad, not look at your phone. I think, and your kids end up doing that as well. They see you doing that. They're on TV, on their iPad. So I think doing that, and also one thing I've been able to do is either I take short holidays, so 1 day or 2 days, or otherwise if I'm away for 5-6 days, I'll ensure I'm working during that time. So it will be 30% of my holiday, 40% of my holiday will be work, but then I'm with the kids, with the family for the rest of the day. So I find that works.
Now, I hardly dare ask this because I'm sure you don't have any at all, but in what little spare time you do have, what do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, in my spare time, I like music. So I like to play a couple of instruments, a bit of keyboard, music, playing the piano. I find that relaxes me, or trying to compose. I think that's something I like to do, or, obviously family time in spare time. And yeah, I don't really get much of it, so it's difficult to say what to do, but that's what I'd like. That's what I tend to do in spare time, essentially.
So self-care, wellness, it plays a big part of Vitabiotics, but does it play a big part in any of the other businesses you're involved with, or should it play a big part in those businesses? I'm
a great believer in health and nutrition and wellness, and with the other investments that I've made, it's very different. When I came on the show with Dragon's Den, I thought, essentially my value add would be in that sort of area, in consumer goods and marketing and distribution. But actually, it's about understanding people and businesses and advising on what direction to go. So for me now, it's not about having to have investment in my particular industry. I'm already, heavily invested in healthcare. I don't necessarily need to be. But there's been one or two businesses, interesting enough, like a System, which is a men's grooming supplements company, a direct-to-consumer business that's quite different to ours, where I've invested in, and they just launched a month or two ago. And so it is sort of related in an area, but where I see certain things that I'm not going to be doing in my business, for instance, there's another company or entrepreneurs that can do that, then I'll back them. But now it's, as I said, it's not one particular industry, it could be anything.
And that sector, the health, the skincare, the well-being, that whole sector is really booming at the moment. Do you have any advice for other budding entrepreneurs wanting to get into that sector?
Look, I mean, apart from the usual trends that you have today, which is sustainability, inclusivity, natural aspects, I think it's important that you're actually making a product that is a point of difference, that can really solve or have a real key benefit. There's no point doing the same thing, packaging it differently, because you will not succeed, because the market, as you say, is so competitive. Everyone's doing it. You've got the big players from Estee Lauder, L'Oreal, etc. So find something that is really different, that's going to change things, and then make sure it ticks those boxes about being current and on trend. And I think there's definitely areas you can break into, because a lot of these big companies, multinationals, they are not equipped to have a startup mentality and come up with new products. So what they tend to do is they look at other startups that come in and bring new products and categories and then end up buying them or taking them over. So you do have opportunities and it's out there. So I wouldn't say it's too competitive not enter the industry.
So final question. If you had to describe your life in a movie title, what would it be?
Well, I love watching movies, my wife and I. So I would say it's gone from Driving Miss Daisy to Ford versus Ferrari, or the new Le Mans 66 movie. So I think it's accelerated so much, and I'm really happy. And it's busier than ever, but it's good. So Sara, I've got some questions for you. I know you'd watched the show before becoming a dragon, but how did it feel to film the first episode?
I haven't just watched the show since I became a dragon, or just before I became a dragon. It literally dates back to the very first episode. I can remember I was a student at university, and as a management student, you can imagine a program like this coming out was just unbelievable for us. And we would all get together, I think it was a Thursday night at the time, we'd all get together and sit round and watch the show and hang off people's every words. I tell you what, mind, I made the mistake at dinner one night telling Peter Jones that I remember sitting watching him when I was at university and the show first came out, and he gave me this knowing look and said, we won't be talking about that anymore.
Yeah, was it 15 years now, 16 years?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's, you wouldn't believe it to look at him, would you not? Doesn't look a day over 30.
No, he's still there, still as tall as ever.
But yeah, I must admit, it was a little bit surreal, that first day in their filming, sitting in the chair, and I did have a little bit of imposter syndrome, because I for many years, I've pictured how phenomenal it would be to get the chance to walk through the doors and be an entrepreneur and pitch at these dragons.
Yeah.
It wasn't until a few years ago that I started to dare having the dream of what would it be like if I was one of the dragons being pitched to. So yeah, total surreal experience.
Great experience. And likewise, I remember, stepping into the den for the first time, you've got this image of it being, on the show, and you've got these dragons up there, but actually sitting in there is just so surreal. I mean, it's incredible. Brilliant. How does it feel to be the youngest dragon?
I think age is something that you only define personally. And I think for me, I only came to be on the show because a friend of mine said, "Oh, you've always said you'd love to go on Dragon's Den. Why don't you give them a call?" And straight away I said, "Well, I can't do that." And when he asked me why, I said, "Well, I'm not old enough. I was only 33 at the time." I said, I'm not old enough to apply for Dragon's Den. And he said, but age is irrelevant, it's your experience. So because I started my business a lot younger, I was 21 when I started the business, I guess now I've got 14 years of business experience under my belt. A lot of people don't have that sort of business experience under their belt till they're in their 50s or 60s even. So I guess when someone spun it to me and explained it like that, I started to have a little bit more self-belief that it wasn't necessarily about my age, and I shouldn't let my age stop me. So.
Look, I think it's spot on. I mean, today, it's interesting, the number of kids that come up to me and talk about the fact that they watch Dragons Den, inspiring them as well. Yeah. So having a young dragon on the team is brilliant. It's inspirational. And when did you feel you could build a big business out of crafting?
I really didn't. I had no idea. You know, I started my business in the craft industry, and the reason I came to be in the industry is I've always crafted, I've always had a love of it. But when I did my university degree, I did one of these degrees where you did a couple of years working, so a couple of years studying, a year working, and then back to your studies. And in that year, I went and worked for a tiny little craft business, and they really were a tiny little craft business. And in the year that I was there, it opened my eyes to an industry that not only did I know existed, but really it went through a huge boom period back then. You're talking about 15 years ago now, right at the peak of, you know, economic prosperity. And there was little craft shops opening all over the country, and everyone seemed to be getting into this hobby. And I just remember looking at this industry thinking, wow, this is so exciting. And the biggest company in our industry at the time was probably turning over about 20 million. And I remember thinking, oh, if I could just be a tenth of the size that they are, that would be phenomenal. And so I set out on my journey to try and get to there. And then as I was starting to get to there, I started thinking, well, one day I might be as big as some of the slightly larger companies in my industry. And I remember it was, 4 or 5 years ago now, we got to be the size of that company. And I actually had a chance to buy that company at one point, decided I didn't want to. And I look back now and think,
that must have been quite something to think of that.
That was a really big turning point for me in my career when I had the opportunity to buy this competitor. And I decided I didn't want to, I didn't need to. We were better and bigger than that. And now we are 2 or 3 times the size of that company and growing at a pace of knots. And so did I ever know that I was going to have a business this big in craft? Absolutely not. And do I know where the business is going to take me in craft? Still not got a Scooby-Doo. I just know it's an industry I'm still incredibly passionate about, and I still believe I can grow my company to 10 times the size it is now and still have growth opportunity there.
No, that's interesting. And what advice would you give a young entrepreneur starting out in the crafting world?
See, so it's been brilliant for me because I could know and understand that industry sector inside out, back to front. And actually, I would go so far as to say I know that sector on a global platform, inside out, back to front. And I'm quite privileged, but I say privileged, I've put myself forward for these opportunities. You know, I've served on the global board of directors for the Craft and Hobby Association, and it's just given me the opportunity to tap into networks within the craft industry worldwide. And I think knowing and owning that space has given me the confidence to look for opportunities in that industry way beyond what I would have maybe otherwise looked at. And also, it's given me the confidence to really go and trailblaze in our industry. So there's a lot of what we do doesn't follow the business model of our competitors. We're kind of a bit of a mashup of a number of business models. And I think it's because I am in such a niche sector that I can have the confidence to do something differently and really command that space.
Yeah. So would you say that try and focus on becoming an expert in that industry and really knowing your stuff so you can have that edge?
Absolutely. Our customers know that, when you think craft, we are the company you think about. And I think if you can find a sector where you can have that laser focus on where you're going, there's no doubt if you've got the skills to back it up, you can dominate that sector.
So how did you get started working with manufacturing and making products?
That's a good question. So my first product was a product called the Enveloper. And I didn't have any money when I started out in business, literally about £5,000 of the savings from a summer job. And when I had a quotation to have my product made in plastic, it was going to be over £20,000, which was money I just didn't have. So my dad, who's an engineer, friend of his had a local joinery firm, and so they made it in wood for me. And my first 30,000 envelopers that we sold were MDF. Made, so very expensive unit cost, but no upfront tooling cost. And so the profit I then made from the sales of the wooden envelopers, we reinvested to upgrade them and make them in plastic. We then reinvested those profits to make the next product. And I guess because I had that stepping stone, I learned about the engineering side and the product and the manufacturing before we went on to injection moulding. It meant that I could grow the business at a pace I could afford to bankroll. So I never had to have outside investment in the business. And it meant I could take the learning as I went along. If I just went in from day one and I took out a loan or got investment for that 20,000, chances of me getting that right first time probably would be pretty slim. I think I went on that learning curve to the point whereby once I was making those bigger investments, I knew a bit more about what I was doing.
So I guess you could say a lesson would be that to try and get a proof of concept first to make sure it works. There is a demand for the product. I guess a lot of the time, sometimes you see on Dragon's Den entrepreneurs come in, they haven't shown a proof of concept. So that's important. It doesn't have to be massive sales or massive profit, but to know there's a demand for the product.
Just de-risk.
And then you know, okay, let me put the investment, I'll try and find the money to make it better. If you had to identify 3 key milestones within your career, what would they be?
Oh, that's great. I would say when I first took on, not my first member of staff, but my second member of staff. My first member of staff was my best friend's mum, and it was just a bit of help. But when we actually took that step of, actually, yes, I'm going to take on staff and I'm going to make this more than just a back bedroom business that me and my friend's mum, who, by the way, is now on our board of directors, runs all our finance department. But if I look now, that was a really big milestone for us. I would also say another one was definitely when I had kids. And I think it was, you know, I could no longer spend 14, 16, 18 hours a day working in the business. I had to learn how to be more productive with my time. And also I had to teach and coach other people in the business to step up to the mark, because everything couldn't go through me anymore. That was another big milestone. And I'd say quite recently, the third one was definitely joining the panel on Dragon's Den. And I think it's that step up from, I've done this myself, but can I really have an arm's length involvement in a business and make that business successful? It's a different skill set, and it's something I'm still learning how good I am at it, and I'm enjoying the challenge of doing that. And it's given me something else to go and try and succeed at. So to date, I would say that's probably been the 3 big milestones in my business career.
Great. And do you think when you reach milestones, is it important to celebrate them if they're successes?
I guess with none of those, I realised at the time they were milestones in the business. It's always looking back that I've realised what a milestone it's been. But I do think it's important to celebrate success in the business, both personally and also to be able to share that success with the people who've helped get you there.
Yeah. And finally, do you think there are enough women entrepreneurs out there?
I don't think there are enough entrepreneurs out there. I think no matter what gender, what age, we need to encourage more people to embrace entrepreneurialism as a way of life, as a business choice, not in a career choice, as opposed to going the traditional ways. And I think definitely women is one area that is underrepresented, as they are in many walks of life. So it would be really good to think that I could maybe inspire more women to go out there and you know, take the bull by the horns and pursue a career in entrepreneurialism, start their own business.
Absolutely. I mean, my wife's just become an entrepreneur. She set up her business, so it's exciting. And
there you
hopefully
go.
I think I have something to do with that.